Welcome to Talking New York Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Our show is all about the exciting world of real estate and in particular, how it relates to the luxury New York marketplace. But if you are not planning a real estate transaction in New York, we still have plenty of information you can use no matter where you are. Now, here's our show. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back. I'm Vince Rocco in New York, where the term luxury has been changed by our younger buyers more than ever before. So let's get right to what everyone is talking about. For years, we've defined luxury by what we could measure: price, square footage, prestigious addresses, and designer finishes. But what if the bigger story in luxury real estate isn't the homes themselves? What if the biggest story is the people buying them, younger people? Today's affluent younger buyers are entering the market with different life experiences, different financial realities, and perhaps most importantly, different priorities. They're asking new questions. They're looking beyond status and looking towards something more personal: wellness, longevity, privacy, flexibility, and experiences that enhance the way they live every day. In a market where headlines continue to focus on interest rates, taxes, and economic uncertainty, the luxury segment continues to tell a different story. The resilience of high-end real estate suggests that understanding today's younger affluent consumer requires looking beyond economics and its changing lifestyles and values and aspirations. So what is driving this new generation of luxury buyers? How is one of the largest wealth transfers in history reshaping New York City's high-end market? And if luxury is no longer just about owning something extraordinary, but living extraordinarily, what does that mean for developers, brokers, and consumers alike? And here on set with me today are Serge Markarian from Brown Harris Stevens and Stephen Gottlieb from Coldwell Banker Warburg. And they join me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate, so let's go behind the headlines and inside the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at stephen@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, today we're going to talk about the affluent younger buyer that, is running all over New York City. A couple of weeks ago, we did a show on the wealthy buyer, or what was important to people who have been used to buying expensive apartments, expensive neighborhoods, etc. Today, we're going to talk about the younger folk who are buying, and we're going to see, they may be buying the same type of apartment, same price point of apartment, but their thinking or their needs are completely different than what older buyers have been buying for years. They may be spending the same amount of money, but the luxury buyer today has a whole different thing on their mind, not just a Tony address or a great size apartment. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. I'm really excited about this show. Serge, let me start with you. We've heard a lot lately that luxury buyers are getting younger. Are you seeing that in your business, and how is it changing the way luxury homes are being marketed and sold compared to how maybe we used to market and sell higher end property?
Yes. So I guess that goes back to that great wealth transfer. So we're starting to see that. So the buyers are becoming younger because the parents or families helping them out, with, let's face it, New York City prices are high. You need a big down payment to buy one of these nice, very nice apartments. But I feel like just up until not too long ago, having one gym in the building was just great and nobody even used it. And now the younger generation wants that great experience, and the experience involves proper gym, a spa experience. Even music studios are becoming so common. It used to be extremely rare.
I actually just saw one in a new development downtown for the first time. I thought, a music studio?
No,
interesting.
You're going to see more and more of that.
But I liked it.
It's very nice.
Great.
You can do your podcast there without renting a studio.
By the way, they also had a podcast studio next door to the. I'm like, okay, moving right in.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, the screening rooms used to be just a small room with a screen. Now it's like beautiful recliners.
But how are we changing our marketing approach to these newer type buildings? Because we still have a lot of older buildings that some of the affluent younger buyers are looking at. What's more important to them? We're going to get into a whole bunch of stuff, but are we looking at marketing these things differently, zeroing in on just that audience, or are we still kind of looking at everyone who might be able to afford to buy something?
No, you need to market to everybody, of course. The younger generation is kind of like emerging, but they're not the majority of the market. So the older generation who has the money and the income and everything else, we have to market it to them. Whether the old building can be retrofitted or it can just squeeze in a few more extra things in there, that's a different story. But yeah.
Stephen, your opinion on that? So are you seeing it in your business where the younger buyer, and you and I had a brief conversation before air here where you talked to a couple of your younger buyers. Are we looking at marketing things differently, selling things differently? What are they, the younger affluent buyer, really focusing on?
Well, thank you for having me. Always exciting and a pleasure to be here. I think that there's not necessarily a uniformity to what any buyers are looking for. We were just talking earlier about the fact that I have one client who left a very large apartment downtown and they moved to the Upper West Side to be closer to everything in their life that was convenient. And they moved to actually a smaller apartment, but in a building that had a ton of amenities. And I think that there's been a bit of a conversation over the years that sometimes the amenities are a little bit more useful when you're marketing the property versus when people are actually living there. Do they use them? And this client told me that she hosts mahjong parties in the common room. The kids are in at the basketball court all the time. She uses the gym and the spa in the building. And we were also saying that often when we show an apartment that has a gym and we go down to the gym, there's nobody there. And this client told me that there's always people there in that gym. So I think that perhaps there's a bit of a shift. Maybe we're seeing more of that. But I also think there's not necessarily a uniformity to it. That said, I do think that amenities are a really fantastic marketing opportunity to market a building in an apartment.
I spent 15, 16, maybe 17 years selling new developments here at Brown Harris Stevens and Halstead before for years. And as you just said, and you mentioned before, all these new buildings have plenty of amenities, gym always being one of them. I have to have a gym. I have to have a rooftop. I have to have a playroom. I have to have, this room, that room, whatever. And when I used to go through the building showing prospective buyers the amenities, no one was ever in any of them, including the gym. And I'd say, and they'd ask me, does anybody ever use the gym? And I'd say, no, not while I'm here, not that I can see. It is different today. And I wanted to ask you, Serge, because the phrase health is the new wealth, and we touched on it a minute ago when you were chatting. Do you believe wellness, and gym being one aspect of wellness, really has become the defining feature of what younger affluent buyers are looking at when they're looking at luxury? Is it really wellness in addition to other things?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They look at every little thing. Gym is not just having a bench press or whatever. They want to have their Pilates corner and the yoga corner. And the apartments have to be very airy. They want the air to be filtered. They want the vents, the dryers to vent out. They don't want any of those extra particles or chemicals to be in their living space. People didn't care as much before about all that little details.
Right. So beyond price and location, what qualities seem to influence, the decisions mostly today? I mean, he touched on a bunch of them, which the younger people are looking at. But what other qualities are people looking at?
I think that if I open the Pandora's box of renovation comment, we're going to go very much down that path. I think that's the big one. Do you want to go there now or should we go there later?
Go there now.
All right. I think that you have a lot of young affluent buyers compared with previous generations. And you mentioned this earlier. You said, the Tony address is not necessarily as important as it once was. I'm finding that there are a lot of affluent buyers, younger, who are fine living at an address that is not Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Central Park West. They don't care. They would often much rather live in a condo that has every amenity that you can think of, as opposed to living in an older building, likely a co-op, at an address that has some perhaps international cachet. The convenience is much more important to them than the address. Another point, and this is sort of, I think, this lends itself to the amenities in a building, but the real signs of luxury today, and luxury brands would hate that I say this, but I think it's true. The real signs of luxury today are not necessarily a fancy car and a handbag. The real signs of luxury today are expensive things that make your life more convenient.
More of a lifestyle.
Right. I had buyers who were exceedingly wealthy, And the wife walked around in a Patagonia vest. They had a minivan that looked like a tornado went through it. And they always had help with them. If the children were misbehaving, the wife could still concentrate on dealing with looking at property because there was always a nanny with them. They flew privately because they didn't want to deal with the inconvenience of an airport and boarding a flight. And looking at these people, you would never know. But the way they spent their money, I think, is indicative of how the affluent today defines luxury. It's more about what is going to make my life easier, not necessarily what are the symbols and signals that I'm putting out there to the world to let them know that I'm rich.
And what do I like to do? What do I like in my lifestyle choices, et cetera? Based on what he just said, Serge, we talk about buildings, and anyone who knows me personally knows that I live in a pre-war. I've always lived in a pre-war building here in New York. I will only live in a pre-war. I do not like modern buildings. I can sell them like nobody's business, but I would never, ever, ever, ever live in one. I just don't like them. Can you say that we can find, or the younger affluent buyer can find, the type of luxury that we're talking about in an older pre-war building that may not have a gym, that may not have any other amenity, but maps to their lifestyle, how they want to live? Is that still possible in a pre-war versus a modern brand new condo structure that has everything?
Well, I mean, it is possible because it comes down to the personal preferences. We all have must-haves and things that we can compromise on. There are people who absolutely want to have washer and dryer in their units, and some people who can get by. Some people have to have a garage in the building, and some people just don't. Doesn't matter to them.
Right.
So if the gym is not well equipped, it's a pre-war building, then there's always an Equinox somewhere, right? There's always a better equipped gym around the corner that they can rent.
I mean, I want to see people. So when I'm doing a gym thing, I want to go to Equinox and I want to see people.
Yes.
You go to a gym in a building, there's no one ever in it.
Yes. That's always been my thing. I'm like, building gyms are usually boring because nobody goes there. But I mean, as they progress into something more elaborate and more complete, then people are starting using it.
Because a lot of these luxury developments are really kind of akin to five-star hotels. And I've said for years, and again, this is me personally, I don't want to live in a hotel. I mean, I have no interest in living in a hotel. Yeah. I like my private pre-war building. It's not a small building. It's a nice-sized building, but it's comfortable. It meets or matches my lifestyle. I'm not young, but it meets and matches my lifestyle.
I think I almost have a question to pose to both of you. I know you're the one asking the questions,
sure,
but
doesn't matter.
Question for you. If a building, and if too many buildings have everything you can imagine in them, to the point where a woman can go get a manicure in the building and use the pet spa in the building, and pet spas are now much more common.
Yes, absolutely.
You begin to possibly have a world in which you don't have to leave your building to have everything that you need in a way that the neighborhood used to supply. And therefore, is there a damage, perhaps a small damage at first, but maybe a bigger damage later, to the neighborhood and to street life and to what we love about New York City, if there are certain people who never leave their building because they have everything that they could possibly need there?
The first thing that comes to my mind is isolation.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't particularly like that. I'm very much a people person. I like to talk to people. I like to be with people. I like to see people. So I don't want to feel isolated within my home. When I'm home in my apartment, that's one thing. But I don't want to have, the ability to do everything I want to do within the building. Now, I will say, though, what you said earlier, the podcast studio and the music studio.
That comes in handy.
That's intriguing,
yes.
But I worry also about the neighborhood, the mom and pop stores, the local gyms, whatever. These are the things that make
New York.
Make New York and make New York tick. So I would be concerned about me personally being isolated, and secondly, about how that affects my neighborhood. And also, you want to know who your neighbors are, by being out on the street.
Well, more and more around the country, the most affluent people are building and moving into homes that are increasingly isolated, whether it's in a gated community where everyone is just like them. They will often hire private security. They're therefore no longer relying on municipal police. They're flying privately, so they're no longer interacting with other people at the airport except for other people who are flying privately. So there is, I mean, if we're talking about a class divide, we're sort of headed there in many ways as the ultra wealthy continue to isolate themselves. And there are luxury towers in New York City that are in many ways, you know, our Manhattan or Brooklyn or another borough's version of what we are seeing in gated communities for the ultra wealthy in many other markets around the country.
Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
So I would say ultra wealthy, kudos to them. It's good to have the money, fine. But it's still a very small percentage of the population of New York, right? So if they want to really gate themselves inside the buildings, that's fine. My experience is that generally, you know, most of us here are implants. They're not born and raised in New York. And generally, when they first move to New York, they want to isolate themselves because they come from that kind of a mentality, living in big houses and nobody knows where they do, what they do, et cetera. After living here for a year or two, then they realize the fun is happening on the street, and they change their mentality, and they want to mingle more. But one thing about the buildings, whether it's changing, you said damaging the neighborhood. One thing I learned many years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when it comes to fashion and trend and everything else, and real estate is also a trend, right? Is that it feels like the marketing comes from the developers and fashion executives, that they impose their trend on people, but it's generally the other way around. They follow the trend from people. They kind of listen to what the community wants, and they provide it to them in a different way.
That's right.
So a developer listens to what people are looking for, and that's what they provide. So if that's becoming more and more isolationism, then that's what they get. But I don't think in the long run it's going to stay that way.
But again, all right, we've got to take a break in a minute. But again, I think a lot of it is what, you know, Stephen was alluded to before. You're right. It really comes down to, what is my lifestyle? What do I want my lifestyle to be? How do I want to live? Do I want to live isolated? Do I want to live in a gated community? Do I want to live in my neighborhood? Everyone has a different, philosophy. I struggle sometimes when I'm talking about the younger, more affluent buyer wanting things that the traditional affluent buyer through the years really didn't want. And we're going to talk a little bit about the transfer of wealth, how that may affect their thinking when we come back. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network here at Brown Harris Stevens. We'll be back right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So let's talk about square footage. Let's talk about the size of the apartment, okay? I think if you give anyone a choice in this town, everybody would pick a large apartment, taking cost out of the equation. Large apartment, multiple rooms, multiple bathrooms, whatever. Are buyers today placing greater value on experiences that we talked about, lifestyle experiences, whatever, other than square footage? And if so, how are the developers, the new developers that you talked about before the break, how are they changing their plans and their footprints in a building, making them bigger, smaller? What are people focused on? Is it any more about the size of the apartment, the square footage, or not?
Size matters. No, so people do definitely care about the square footage. And I see, even one bedrooms, when they used to be very small, now you see them larger, a little bit larger. It's not like drastically larger compared to outside.
No, right.
But at the same time, I see developers paying more attention to airiness of the apartment. Even if it's small, they want to make sure lots of natural light comes in. There's conveniences inside the apartment that makes the person feel more comfortable, even if it's a small space. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely has changed, yeah.
I mean, if we're comparing new dev to your traditional pre-war, a lot of the time you are trading age and age of renovation to size. But
also new dev apartments are not necessarily big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you might get a much more gracious, you might get an apartment with much more graciously sized rooms, but you're going to have to do some work because someone's been living there for a long time because, that's all resale.
Yeah.
Natural light, that's an interesting one. First, I remember when I first started selling real estate, everybody had to have southern exposure, and blah, blah, blah. I need natural light beaming in my house all day long. And I'm like, really? Why? No. And after the weather we've had this summer, you want screaming south sun in your windows all day long? No. Horrible.
Yes.
Terrible. But this is what people ask for. Yes. So when it's not only about the exposure or about the square footage. I try to map it to what we're talking about today. How does that really affect someone's lifestyle? I don't understand it. What do you do in your apartment, size-wise or otherwise, that really kind of fits your lifestyle? Don't you live your life outside of your home? And maybe that's why before I was pushing back on saying, why do I want to be isolated within my building? I want to live my life outside in the greatest city in the world, New York.
Well, a friend of mine once said that in New York City, we are paying very high rent, very high taxes.
Yes, of course.
And it is a cover charge for the best party in the world, the best networking party in the world, perhaps. I think there's a lot of truth to that. So there is the argument is if we are moving our subject person, our subject buyer out of the amenities in the building and into the city, then you can make the argument that maybe having a larger apartment is less important if you're going to be outside exploring and taking advantage of the neighborhood that you've moved into.
Yeah, but...
So basically, it's always been about the experience living in the city. Be compromised on washer and dryers and garbage disposals, live in cramped up studios to have the experience.
Exactly. And again, and maybe because I've been living here for many decades, it's kind of like, yes, I get it. And sure, I'd like, a 14-room apartment if I could afford that. But, to me, it's more about my lifestyle, what I like to do, who I like to see, where I want to do it. Yeah. And that to me is outside. I say on the streets of New York, but you get what I'm saying. Outside of my apartment,
yes.
Out in the New York environment. Recently noted that a large percentage of our transactions, $4 million and more, have been all cash. Is all cash kind of still influencing negotiation and competition in our market these days? I mean, we hear about all cash deals, $4, $5, $7 million. Is that still influencing how people are negotiating and how people are winning in today's market?
Yeah, definitely. It's a big factor because cash is certain. Mortgage, there's uncertainty of, I get it. Above $4 million, the person is probably qualified and they're going to get the mortgage. But the seller probably doesn't want to deal with mortgage contingency or anything like that. And plus, getting a mortgage itself is 30 days extra time on your closing. So cash is faster, it's quicker, and it's more certain. So why not?
Why do people choose cash, Stephen?
I think that it's very dependent on interest rates. We lived through a time when interest rates were historically low. Money was very inexpensive to borrow. Today, it's more expensive. And I think that there is a world in which you maybe want to do something different than your money. With your money, you want to grow it differently. So if you can afford to buy something in all cash, there is an argument to do that now, and it's a stronger one than when interest rates were much lower.
Based on what Serge said a minute ago, sellers don't really want to deal with contingencies or anything, that could be complicated. For example, I just did 2 all-cash deals at different price points, but all cash, and I found that the negotiations were easy.
Yeah.
Because sellers, I'm finding, and I have always found, want a cash deal before anything else because they can close faster and a whole bunch of other things. So, I mean, I have to think that some of these younger, more affluent buyers are coming from cash backgrounds. They're making lots of money. Young folk in this town these days, financial traders, whatever you want to call them, they're making a lot of money. And they have the cash behind them to buy. And I think, though, that it is influencing everybody else in our marketplace who don't have cash and who have to go for mortgages. And somebody who was seeking a mortgage recently said to me, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not as competitive as
they are.
Cash buyer.
They are at a disadvantage
Yes.
in the market.
How do they overcome that?
I don't know that I have an answer for that one.
I mean, I've said just be competitive in your offer.
That's true.
That's usually the case. Yeah,
just be competitive in your offer. Otherwise, how else are you going to do it?
You simplify your offer as best you can. You might have to pay a little bit more if you are competing, if you're in a competitive bidding situation where other people are cash.
Remove contingencies.
Yep.
Remove contingencies. Yeah.
I mean, the suburban areas market has been doing this for a very, very long time. After 2000, like let's say after 2010, 2011, or after COVID, when the prices just skyrocketed, people lined up
those
at
were
the first
wonderful year
open
and a half,
house.
2 years.
Yeah, right.
We all remember those years.
Yeah, but those buyers learned how to be competitive, even if they're getting mortgage.
Yeah.
They just remove all the contingencies.
How much of today's luxury demand is being fueled by the transfer of wealth between generations? We talked a little bit about that before. And do younger affluent buyers approach real estate differently? We talked about that a little bit before, from their parents or their grandparents or generations before them. How is that transfer of wealth working in this town these days? Is it affording more sales, or is it just getting people what they really want based on what their lifestyle is, et cetera?
I think we're in the beginning of that transfer. Maybe it's just me. Maybe some people see it more frequently, but I think we're just the beginning of the transfer. So we're going to see more and more of that. The younger generation is basically purchasing large apartments with millions of dollars worth. But how they approach it, I feel like they're more data driven. They just grew up with tech. Everything starts with on the website. They just love to look at the numbers, and that's good enough for them. So their grandpa may walk into the apartment and say, "Oh, this one has solid bones. I love it. Let's get it." But they're going to look at the numbers and just crunch every little detail and look at every comparable.
As they absolutely
and that's good. Yeah, that's good for them. That's enough.
I think that this topic opens up a lot.
Yes.
The fact is that the baby boomer generation is exceedingly wealthy, and our government taxes work much more highly than it taxes wealth or investments. And you have a generation of baby boomers who are retiring, slowing down, perhaps already retired, and their children are now at the point in their lives where they are growing families, where they are looking to buy that forever home if they're in their 30s and 40s. So I do think that the stars are aligning right now for that exact transfer of wealth. And given the fact that you have a lot of, millennials who are now coming up in the world, it's no mystery as to why and how that's happening. And New York is notorious, especially in the co-op market, for often needing help from family.
You touched on something that I want to talk about a little bit too, the forever home. I've been telling people in the 24 years that I'm in this industry, you're not buying your forever home. You're not buying the last home you're ever going to buy. This is New York City. You're going to buy something. You're going to meet somebody. You're going to grow. You're going to need another bedroom, on and on and on. Or you get to the point where you're going to start downsizing. How many people today, Stephen, you brought it up, how many people today do you think or are saying to you, I want my forever home, and do they even understand what a forever home means? And is it really isolated to the younger affluent buyer, or is it just anyone?
I think that there's a lot of people of a certain age who aspire to buy their forever home as soon as possible.
Do they know what that means?
In their own minds, sure.
Okay.
I look, people change, their priorities change, their views on the world change. Sometimes their financial situations change. Right. That said, if we're talking about the affluent younger buyer, I think a lot of them are looking for their forever home, or at least something that is close to their forever home. If we're talking about younger buyers who are not super affluent, they're still buying what they can afford.
What do you think? Because I'm going to take the other side of it, and I'm disagreeing with you, but when a young affluent buyer says, I got to find that perfect one bedroom or that perfect two bedroom, my forever home, really? Yeah. How is that a forever home?
But I don't know but the one bedroom buyer or the two bedroom buyer, I don't know that they're super affluent. Those are people who are.
Well, putting affluent aside, I agree with you. Putting affluent aside, they still say, I want to find my forever home. A one bedroom, a two bedroom, forever home. Mm-hmm. You going to live by yourself for the rest of your life?
No.
Maybe you are.
Maybe. You never know.
Maybe not.
Yeah. I like to remind them, I mean, from day one when we start looking, I tell them, listen, you need to look at the resale value of this apartment as well.
The value.
Your plans are, most people, I don't say your plan is definitely going to change, but I'm like, most people, their plans change. They decide to move out of the city or upgrade, downgrade, whatever that is. Just think about it 5 years from now, how this apartment is going to sell. Is it going to be worth it? Is it going to appreciate or not?
Right.
So that, I mean, I try to be realistic with them. Like, this is New York, plans change. Most people are receptive to that. I haven't really quite seen this big challenge of, no, I'm staying here and this is going to be my apartment for the rest of my life. But yeah.
We talked about before sustainability, air quality, fitness, mental well-being becoming part of the conversation. Which wellness features are buyers genuinely willing to pay a premium for? I mean, we touched on it a little bit before with gyms and whatever else, but what is there one or maybe two that someone is willing to pay an absolute premium to get?
I think they're willing to pay a premium for like an amenities package. I think that the expectation that the building has a gym is pretty standard now. Whether or not people are willing to pay extra for it, I don't know. I think it's just something that they often expect the building to have. But I don't know that people are willing to pay extra unless it's like a full package of a building that this is part of what you're buying into. Almost like, you had mentioned also earlier the idea that people are maybe buying in a building that has a brand name on it. And I think that what comes with that is the idea that that brand has all of this wellness stuff. If you're buying, a Four Seasons property or there's so many that come to mind. But this is also branding 101, where, why, I guess there isn't anymore, but why was there a Red Lobster in Times Square for as long as there was? Because people like to know what they're getting into. And if a brand has some legs, you can go to any city and buy a home, a condo, whatever, in that building that is the brand that you know what it is. It's the service that you're expecting. If you go, for example, to the Hamptons, the restaurants now are pretty much, all of them are in Manhattan as well. And a lot of the time people want to go to the restaurant in the Hamptons that is the one that they also go to in New York City because they know what they're getting and there's no unpleasant surprises.
Yeah, you bring up several excellent points there, and I talk about branding all the time when I'm teaching, but when it comes to what you just said, people stick to a brand, regardless of whether it's a food brand, a milk brand, whatever it may be, a branded hotel or an amenity, whatever.
Or
they
even
stick to brand.
a loyalty program in an airline.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You tend to stick to the same. That's why, when we say things like the younger buyers are changing things based on their lifestyle, are they really focusing in on what Stephen just said brilliantly, brands? Because we are kind of conditioned to pay attention to the brands that we've always been used to, heard of, participated in. Is that changing at all, or is it kind of staying the same?
So I think, going back to the original question, I do think that people are willing to pay up for a brand that they recognize.
And that's what attracts buyers. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that totally. And especially with the package of amenities that is provided, as opposed to looking at a gym, it's like gym is a gym, like everybody thinks. But when there's a big package, and especially if you know the developer or the marketing company, you're like, okay, I trust that developer. Let's just go look at.
So you don't think it's just a trend? Do you think that this is something that's really kind of sticking and will?
I don't know,
long?
But I'm going to try and sort of bring all this together for a moment. If people are spread, if affluent people, if you have a household where both the husband and the wife are working, or where both partners are working, and there's kids, they're probably spread somewhat thinly. And now they're paying the luxury sign that we talked about is paying for services, paying for conveniences. If that's very important to you, you might not have the time or the bandwidth to do the research on a building that isn't a brand that when you can buy a condo in a building that is branded with something you know exactly what you're getting, and that is another convenience in your life where you can skip the work that you would have to do otherwise to know if this is a really good choice or not, especially with an expensive asset.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day also, I mean, inventory is not like we have this giant inventory of apartments and buildings to pick from, and you just go and pick and choose. You look at 50 apartments and like, oh, this one has a better brand. And at the end of the day, you have to pick and choose what is a must-have. As you mentioned, families with kids, of course, space is the most important thing they want, space and convenience inside the apartment. If the building doesn't have the gym and amenities that they really, really want, like, okay, I'll deal with it. I sign up at a different place in the neighborhood.
And if we're talking about resale, if a building is branded, a homeowner can say, oh, well, this brand is going to carry, so when I go to sell this, it'll mean something on the market years later.
And the reason I say trend is because looking ahead, right, 5 years, it's 6, 7 years from now, the luxury buyer, are they still going to be thinking these things? Or that's why I said before, do you think it's a passing fad? Do you think it's going to stick, whatever?
How's your crystal ball?
Is it on their I know we can never.
Yeah, you never have a crystal ball.
But I mean, I don't think it's a trend. I agree, that it is a brand.
Yeah.
It will stick around 5 years from now. You just mentioned resale. When you go and sell an apartment 3, 4, 5 years from now, you're hoping that next buyer coming in is going to think the same way you did when you purchased it, right?
Yeah, most likely. I mean, certain trends change, but having a package of very nice amenities in a building, I think that's here to stay. It's been many, many years. I mean, people were okay with gyms. I think COVID changed a lot, and people started like living inside the buildings more, and they cared about these things. So why? Once you have something nice, you don't want to get rid of it. You want to keep it.
And do they go from whatever brand they picked and bought?
Yeah.
To the next one having the same thing?
I think in real estate, when you're talking about brand, it's basically the reputation of that building. And and that reputation comes in the package of the management of the building, developer who started it. So developers have a reputation, which one is better than the other, and then the management of the building, then the board of the building. So over the years, when the building has that good reputation, technically good brand, then of course people want to be there. And that's where the prices stay up and more stable and easier to sell.
There's a comfort in knowing the level of service that I'm going to be experiencing, the quality of construction that I'm going to be living in, and if there is a brand that I already know attached to a building, that takes away a lot of the unknowns.
The uncertainties. All right, we're going to take another quick break. We're coming right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York on the More Network. We'll be right back.
This podcast is supported by the More Network, powered by Brown Harris Stevens. Real estate touches every aspect of our lives, from design and architecture to investing and the economy. Now there's a way to get all your real estate information in one place, the More Network. With more than 20 podcast and webcast series, the Mastery of Real Estate Network is powered by Brown Harris Stevens, one of the country's most distinguished brokerages. Discover advice from notable entrepreneurs, compelling topics, and access to top global real estate experts. Subscribe to their YouTube and Apple podcast channels by visiting getmorenetwork.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So, for sellers of luxury properties, what improvements or investments deliver the greatest return in today's market, given the changing buyer priorities? So you mentioned renovations before. We talked a little bit about what buyers are looking at, what their lifestyle is. What can sellers do to improve their property when they know at some point they're going to sell it, list it, and trade it?
I'm a big believer of kitchen and bathrooms, and then floors, of course.
Me too.
Yes.
Kitchen, in that order.
Kitchen, bathrooms, and the floors, and then, of course, paint. But, nice kitchen. It doesn't have to be super expensive. If somebody's on a very tight budget, there are ways to go about it to minimize the cost. And then that definitely you go by the trend. If it's all white, then go with the white and the white marble. If it's darker colors, then go. Nowadays, I feel like little natural colors and warmth goes a long way. But kitchen, bathrooms, and floors.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Stephen? And
Same thing.
Sellers ask you, what can I do to kind of make my place look more appealing for when I want to sell?
Are we talking about getting ready to list and selling, or are we talking about I'm going to live here for another 5 years?
Both. Starting with I'm going to live here for a while, but then I want to be appealing to someone out there, a buyer out there, when I do decide to list.
Right. I think that if you're living in a home, this is an asset, and although the real estate might appreciate, the renovation is depreciating.
Right.
And if this is your largest asset, then you owe it to yourself and to your financial portfolio to maintain that asset as best you can. Obviously, it doesn't mean you're renovating every year, but you should be keeping things relatively fresh.
Yeah.
Fresh and updated.
Yeah. A good renovation goes a good 10, 15 years.
Sometimes more.
Sometimes more if you do it the right way. So you do dark colors and,
Don't
whatever.
abuse your kitchen and bathroom. It's going to last a long time.
Well, also, demo is demo. And if somebody is going to buy your home and they don't like your taste, it doesn't matter if they're demolishing a kitchen that's 1 year old or demolishing a kitchen that is 40 years old. Either way, demo is demo and rebuilding is rebuilding.
And we always talk about, and we've done shows, in the past on this program where, the way an apartment shows, the easier or more difficult it can be to sell it or to trade it. If it doesn't show well, you're going to linger. If it shows brilliantly well, and you got a good shot at selling it faster. For the young buyer, though, entering the luxury market today, how do you separate meaningful long-term value from amenities that we've talked about, throughout the program today, that may simply be fashionable today but may not be tomorrow? And again, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know. We can go on a trend today, but we don't know about what tomorrow may bring. Mm-hmm. So how do you counsel the younger buyer who's looking for specific things that may not, exist somewhere down the road, or that somebody may not want somewhere down the road?
Are you asking if they're just really focused on finding that and they're not able to because it's very rare to find? Or Well, I mean, you have to be very realistic with them. Tell them, this is a rare amenity that you're looking for. Listen, not everybody's looking for it.
Because when you talk about meaningful long-term value,
Yes.
what are you putting that value on, right?
If we're pivoting away from building amenities, I think that it's safe to say that in any market, people are willing to pay a premium for turnkey, and they expect a certain discount for needs work. And that premium is not necessarily the cost of the work, and that discount is not necessarily the cost of the work. There's the other cost of the blood, sweat, and tears. And if you have to renovate, a lot of the time you have to live somewhere else. So you're carrying two different places.
Yes.
Therefore, I think that as we have a generation of buyers that have really become very accustomed to new development and have never necessarily taken on a renovation, and they lived through the pandemic where all we ever heard about was all the supply chain delays, and on top of it, you're getting inflation when it comes to all of your materials. It's obvious and it's true that stuff that needs work, the discount is now deeper. And if it's turnkey, I mean, you look at the price per square foot of some of the luxury condos, these are expensive homes. Yes. And then you look at these quote unquote forever homes that was someone else's forever home, and on the co-ops on Park Avenue, and it seems like a deal in many ways. Mm-hmm. But it comes with, are you capable of, are you willing to, do you want to take on a renovation to make this home what you want it to be, what you feel you need it to be?
Let's talk a little bit about renovations because, as Stephen just said, we've gone through all kind of iterations of it was easy, it was difficult, and COVID came, supply chain issues.
Yes.
Cost of everything today is incredible. But yet there are homes that people buy, regardless of whether they're young and affluent or just anybody, that need work.
It is human nature also to complain about things that are difficult.
Well, sure.
And if something's going well, you don't necessarily scream it from the rooftops. No. So if you look at today's affluent buyer, when they're talking with all their friends, somebody might sit there and complain about their renovation. Mm-hmm. They're not going to sit there and say, oh my God, this was so easy. So therefore, if perception is reality, and for all of us, let's be honest, perception is reality, renovations probably seem to the unpracticed buyer really, really daunting and something that they do not want to take on because of all of the things that we've just been talking about.
When we talk about renovations and when we've covered a little bit about, who's doing it, who's not doing it, the reasons why they're not doing it, but a lot of homes still need renovation and a lot of people still want to do it, right? And maybe they don't because it's costly, maybe they don't because of supply chain problems, whatever. In your world, your orbit of real estate, how many people are actually taking on a renovation as we speak? And why are they doing it?
It's just very rare right now. Really, as Steven said, they just don't want to do it. I feel like maybe more experienced buyer who's already done this in the past would take on a renovation. I mean, I see this magnificent Park Avenue apartments, the beautiful, gracious, large, but it's a state sale, for example, and needs full gut. Yeah. Only a person with a lot of experience with this would take on a job like that, not the young, even affluent. I don't care how much money they have. They just don't want to get into that.
I was recently working with a young buyer whose parents were co-purchasing with them, and the parents were playing a very large role in the process, not just financially, but also I think there was a plan that when the kid outgrew the apartment, the parents would use it as a pied-à-terre, that kind of thing. Yeah. And when we were looking at property, the daughter was so overwhelmed and intimidated by the idea of even replacing like a countertop in a kitchen. Yeah. And the mother just said, we can do this. This is not a big deal. Focus on the space. The mother was like coaching the daughter to help her understand what was considered a big job versus, something that they could accomplish in a week or two. I think that speaks specifically to this.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I teach continuing ed in real estate. I also, from time to time, tutor people who have just finished their sales 101 class and want to become agents and have to take the state exam, and they get all crazy. Brown Harris Stevens, the company that I work for, has a directive now that all of their property managers need to be licensed as salespeople. So they've hired me from time to time to tutor some of their property managers, which I was doing one yesterday. And he was telling me he manages a lot of buildings on Park Avenue, okay, and on Sutton Place and on East End Avenue. So pretty, high-flying buildings. And he said, how we got onto the subject of renovation, he said a lot of people still need to renovate, including, estate, sales, whatever, but they're just not doing it because it's very expensive. And, you're talking about a lot of rooms on Park Avenue where they're not cheap apartments. Yeah. And it's like people are just still kind of hesitating in their renovation. And it's also taking forever once it's started to get done.
Yes.
I mean, my sister is having 2 bathrooms in her 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo up in Westchester. It's already about 5 weeks. 1 bathroom is done, and the second bathroom has just begun. And I keep saying, what are they doing?
Yes.
Or more importantly, what are they not doing?
Yeah.
What? I mean, they're not huge bathrooms. I mean, they're normal-sized bathrooms.
Yes.
And the thing is, I find with a lot of the contractors, they have multiple jobs going on, so they're running all over the place, trying to get them all done at the same time. No, that's not working for me.
Yes. No, I mean,
finish one and go on to the next.
Contractors, no offense to them. The good ones are very good, but generally, notoriously, they're always delayed. And they just take on so many projects, and then they don't have the manpower to handle everything. And of course, you have to remember, in New York City, we have limitations with timing of when work can be done.
Well, that's a whole different story.
They can't work in
Well, she's in a condo in Westchester, it's the same thing.
Oh,
They got work hours,
but no, contractors, which adds to all the uncertainties, and they give you a price, and the price goes up 50%, and 70%, and 100%.
Let me ask you, Serge, because you wrote an article, here, and I think it was on our blog about this topic that we're talking today. The reason we're doing this show is because of the article you wrote and I read. Let me ask you, in the whole scheme of things and everything we've talked about today, what was the impetus for you to sit down and write that? What were you thinking about? What were you trying to say out there for those maybe not in the real estate industry reading it? Yes. What kind of message did you want to get out there about what our market is today, as it applies to the younger affluent buyers, et cetera? What was in your mind, and what did you want to get out there?
Well, I think the main idea is that this is a trend going forward. The young affluent or even non-affluent buyers are the new generation buying, and in a few years they're going to be selling. So what they like now and what they prefer, it seems like they're going to transfer that ideology and their preferences down to the next generation. So it's important to know what they're looking for. Baby boomers, they've always been this very, very important generation, and people like what they wanted. The whole trends and the whole country's changed based on their preferences. So it's very good to know what the millennials and Gen Z are looking for, and then so we can kind of plan for the future to come.
And, the baby boomer, group and others have a lot of money typically. Yes. Are they helping are they more helping the younger affluent buyer today, or is that younger affluent buyer here in New York making their own money because, as I said before, in financial jobs, in Wall Street, in trader, tech, whatever, is it more that they're doing it on their own, or is it more that they're still getting a lot of parental help?
Both. It's totally both, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So finally, if luxury is no longer defined solely by prestige and price, how would each of you define luxury today and 5 years from now? I mean, we talked about it. We mentioned a whole...
Yeah.
Am I talking about luxury as a luxury real estate agent, or am I talking about the definition of luxury to today's affluent consumer?
Both. Because that word luxury has so many different meanings.
And we throw it around.
And we throw it around like everybody thinks, I'm a luxury real estate agent and you're selling studios, okay? Not that that's a problem, but I'm saying everybody tacks on luxury to what they do.
Well, what I was going to say, it's funny you say that, is luxury is a service. I think that somebody buying a studio deserves luxury service
100%.
as much as somebody buying something much more expensive. And
we are in the service industry.
Yes.
And I work really hard for my buyers that are buying studios, and I work really hard for my buyers that are buying something much bigger.
Same here.
I think luxury is a service in terms of us as real estate agents. And as I said earlier, I think that the true signs of luxury for today's consumer and today's wealthy is in the form of what is making my life more convenient.
I'm gonna take the other side again, okay, and not because but just in general, and say, okay, so we all like to tag on that luxury to everything we do in this business. Is it that the perception of New York when it comes to real estate is only about luxury, is only about zillion-dollar properties, is only unaffordable, so therefore I have to kind of take a pause and I can't really buy because I can't afford that? Or am I over-exaggerating the use of the word luxury?
I think the word luxury has been overused, a lot thrown around, as we just said. I mean,
100%.
Yeah, maybe because New York City is just expensive, everything feels luxury, right?
When I go to the grocery store, I feel like it's luxury.
God, I feel like a wealthy person.
Okay.
I think luxury is an aspiration, and therefore, if you are trying to sell luxury, you are therefore playing into somebody's aspiration for a life of luxury.
But when I go to my local bodega and I walk out with one little white plastic bag and it's $65 or $70, I ain't feeling luxury. I'm feeling abused.
I hear you, but you also didn't have to make that sandwich yourself. You had the luxury of someone else making it for you.
And it cost me $17. The last time I
that
bought
also is not cheap, by the way. You get your groceries, because I cook a lot. It's not cheap. Sometimes I feel like I should just get that steak at the restaurant.
I cook every day, but
inflation.
But the last time I bought a sandwich, it was $17, and I thought,
"Whoa, what did you have in this sandwich, Vince?"
Probably vegetarian.
Not caviar. Okay, not caviar. But the whole thing is like, I just think the word luxury, everything these days is very expensive in the country, in New York City, and we're kind of known for that. So I just want to kind of set the record straight. We do everything. It's not just, one or the other. Last question. So if you look at where we've come from COVID, you mentioned it before, booming market right after COVID, then it slowed down a lot. We had interest rate problems, inventory problems, which we still have. What, in your opinion, is the state of our marketplace right now today in August of 2026?
Throughout this whole summer this year, the market has been unusually active by buyers. And I hear it from all my colleagues. I experience it myself. There are a ton of buyers out there. I think this year, starting from January 2, when I was out with a new buyer, January 2, and it was freezing cold, it's been kind of nonstop, which is good to see. I feel like this year they came out with a vengeance, because after 2-3 years of slow market, uncertainties and high interest rates, you name it. I think our problem right now is just inventory, especially this past few weeks. A lot of sellers either pulled it off market because they're like, oh, it's summer, people are traveling, because that's what we've been experiencing all year. Summer, people travel, and it's slow. And also a lot of sellers who are just waiting for after Labor Day or fall season.
Which used to be the trend in this town. Everything was pretty much low-key and quiet in the summer months. And then after Labor Day, things would pick up, all the listings would come out, and on and on.
For my buyers, I hope that that's what happens because inventory is a problem. There's not a lot to show.
No, there is not a lot to show.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is a problem. And aside from the interest rate, which I think buyers have gotten over, and that's why, all of a sudden this year they're running out there. And as I've said on this program many times, and to anybody who wants to hear me, you really can't keep New Yorkers down forever. They may say, no, but then after a while, I have to buy, I want to buy, I need to buy, I can't do this, I got to do it. Yeah. And they do it. And I agree with you. My orbit, my book of business this year, better than it's been the last 2 years. It's been busy, which I'm not complaining about. But I just have to wonder, what is causing all of that? Because nothing really has changed.
No.
Other than what I said. Buyers eventually have to get out there and do something.
I'm currently working with, and this year has been very much about this, I'm working with more out-of-town buyers than I ever have before.
Yep, me too.
That's interesting to hear that you guys are as well, but I'm working with a lot of them.
They come with a different perspective than the New Yorker.
Yeah, some of them are more serious than others, but what I think it comes from is the fact that during the pandemic, so many markets around the country were suddenly injected with rocket fuel. 100%. You look at places like Newport Beach, Miami Beach, parts of Beverly Hills, Naples, Florida, Westport, Connecticut, and the suburbs of New York City, and all of those real estate values just skyrocketed. And if you're a property owner in any of those markets, you look at your net worth and suddenly it's gone up because of your real estate. And now you look at New York City, which, we got hit real hard by the pandemic. And for the most part, our prices have been relatively plateaued for a while now. Yep. And maybe now suddenly New York is not so expensive seeming anymore to these people in other markets. And they say, oh, wow,
totally agree.
I've always dreamt of owning a one bedroom or a two bedroom or right, exactly, near Lincoln Center, whatever, a cute little, not even necessarily so little, but a New York City pied-à-terre. And oh my gosh, suddenly it's much more affordable than I ever thought it was.
And I've said this for years. People always say to me, boy, your show does well. It's been on for a long time. Why is that? And I get this question all the time. I had the same answer for everybody the past 12 years. The reason is because New York City real estate is a global phenomenon. Yeah. Everyone around the world in every country that you don't even know of listens or wants to hear about what goes on in that crazy but absolutely fabulous city of New York.
Yes.
Prices are high. Everything is, cuckoo, whatever.
Sandwiches are expensive.
Sandwiches are $17 a piece.
Bodegas feel like abuse.
Yes. But that's why But that's why they listen, because it's so extraordinary. Right? From what they're normally used to.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, great, I'll take it. But then I sit back and say, but I feel the same way. I think it's a crazy town, right? It is what it is.
Yes.
That's all we got. We're coming back right after these messages with my final thoughts. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank
greatly.
you. Thank you for having us.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at stephen@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we're back with my final thoughts. So luxury has always been about more than price. It is reflected in the aspirations, priorities, and values of people buying it. What changes over time is the desire for exceptional living. It is our definition of what's exceptional and what it means. The definition of luxury is constantly evolving. Yesterday, it may have been about size, status, and the prestigious address. Today, it appears to be just as much about privacy, wellness, time, experiences, and creating a life that feels meaningful. If that's true, then real estate isn't just responding to changing consumer preferences, it's helping shape the way people choose to live. Markets will always evolve, but understanding people will always be the greatest competitive advantage. But one thing remains constant: people don't simply buy property, they invest in the life they hope to live. Success comes from understanding not only the market, but the people who are driving it. And that's this episode for Talking New York Real Estate. Take a moment, please, to look inward and ask yourself, what do you truly value? Not what the world tells you should matter, but what gives you life purpose, balance, and fulfillment. Because the choices we make, how we live, where we live, how we spend our time, and what we surround ourselves with are often a reflection of the person or people we're becoming. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And Oprah Winfrey always says, if you look at what you have in life, you'll always have more. But if you look at what you don't have in life, you'll never have enough. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am truly grateful. Keep thinking the good thoughts, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.